I'm joined by Jacques Cailloux. He's Chief Euro Area Economist at Royal Bank of Scotland. Thanks so much for coming in and joining us. So Paul Krugman today is talking about the chance of a double-dip recession in the U.S. economy. Is that a threat for Europe as well?
Well, if the U.S. falls into a recession again next year, there's no doubt that Europe will fall as well in a recession. I mean, the view that we have is that the U.S. will not experience a double dip, nor will Europe. And the reason behind that, or the most important reason behind that, is the corporate sector behavior. We're seeing a corporate sector that has returned in terms of cash flows to positive territories and is now about to add jobs, which is the most important indicator of sustainability. And we think that the US is approaching that. In fact, we think on Friday we'll see the first job creations in 2 years in the US. Europe lags behind typically in terms of the business cycle, so we're not anywhere close to seeing any job creation, but we think that we are on that trajectory. Now, there are risks around those scenarios, and the double dip scenario cannot be completely excluded, absolutely. Europe faces huge headwinds. It's got a currency appreciation. It's got sovereign risks that have been rising very, very steeply in the recent past. It's got structural inefficiencies, so major headwinds ahead still.
Okay, now isn't there a chance, though, that some of this positive data, perhaps the jobs data coming out of the U.S., ISM figures, some of this could just be a blip? It could just be down to a one-off thing like restocking. Yeah,
absolutely. I think we need to take stock first of the improvement that we have seen. Taking Europe, for example, composite PMI is almost 20 points above its trough. So we've got a buffer here from the levels where we are. And that's true for the ISM as well. Mid-50s, you can fall quite a lot before really worrying about a double dip. So we'll see volatility. This is not going to be a straight line. But we're quite encouraged by the data on the corporate side, which we think is helping us to beef up our view that we're not facing a double dip here.
So you're talking about corporate activity driving some growth. How do you feel about the consumer, which of course is the other big driver of growth?
I mean, as I said, we're still facing huge headwinds. If you're taking a balance sheet approach and you're taking total aggregate debt, both public and private debt, we're probably at similar levels, if not higher levels, than before the crisis. The public sector has taken a huge amount of debt on its balance sheet, some away from the private sector, but in net terms, we have more debt probably in the system than we had before the crisis. So the deleveraging process hasn't even started. So I think there is clearly headwinds ahead. And in that sense, I think growth will remain subpar. So it's fighting the double dip scenario, but certainly arguing in favor of subpar growth in this environment, subdued inflationary pressures, certainly in Europe, which calls for very low interest rates in the future.
Let's talk about the problem children of Europe, Greece in particular. Why is it that you don't think Greece will be allowed to get into too much trouble? It won't be allowed to default?
Well, Greece is already in an awful lot of trouble. That's the first thing to recognize. Default is some way, is a long way away from the current situation, we think. In particular, something, again, that we would fight is this idea of breakup in EMU. We think that, you need to look at the political and the economic angles.
There's no way they will allow Greece to fail, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's just too much at stake. This is a very, very long-term project. We are at the very start of EMU, in a sense, in its life cycle. So there's just too much at stake for the future of the euro to let one periphery country default. And we think that the political willingness at the core of the euro area is still extremely strong and would support the periphery. At this stage, this is, as you said, the bad student of the euro area. You're not going to come and say we're ready to bail you out. You're still going to have the stick here and say you need to put your house in order first, and then you'd get the support. And we think we are in this phase, and we don't think we'll get any EMU disintegration certainly this year.
Jacques Cailloux, thanks very much for joining us.